the table of contents going, okay, where is he going to go? And then right from the get-go, you go for the jugular and dethrone entertainment. And you mentioned that entertainment has become almost part and parcel of the worship. I mean, we even talk about the worship experience today. How has, let's start there, because that kind of lays a baseline for where we're at right now. We have started to basically merge church in the Sunday morning with entertainment. And why is that a bad thing? Start there.
Yeah, because we're made to cultivate in worship, not consume worship. That's the real reason, I think, that like the core. My church that I go to here outside Nashville, we have a number of like values pillars, I think we call them, that are like promises we make to one another. And I can tell already just by saying this that we do a good job of reminding each other of them, because I'm sure other churches I've attended have had values like this, and I could never have told you them. But we recite like in our benediction at the end of our service every Sunday, somebody kind of reminds us of one of them. And the one from this past week was the reminder that we promise to cultivate, not consume, in the worship gathering. And so I think, I grew up in a church that I love. I don't want to dog them. They were very important to my formative spiritual development. But like, I would show up to church on Sunday, and I think a lot of people can align with this. They understand what I'm talking about. Show up to church on Sunday. You walk in, you sit wherever you want. You stand up when instructed to do so. You sing. Perhaps maybe you're singing. You're like, oh, the bands, they sound nice, or they're great. Or maybe you're a good Christian and you're like, you don't really care how the band sounds. You're just engaging in worshiping the Lord in that moment. Like I say good Christian tongue in cheek. Like I find myself paying attention to the band as much as I do pay attention to the actual words I'm singing. So I'm not saying, it's bad, but you engage with the singing, you sit down, you laugh at the pastor's joke, to say, oh, that's some interesting insight. Good sermon, pastor. You leave, you go home, you come back for the same thing next week. And it's just a sort of event. That's a very typical, I think, American Christian experience. I think that's the kind of church I grew up in, that I spent a lot of time in over the years. And I think the Lord can work through those worship environments. I don't think they're like inherently wrong. However, I look at that compared to like the worship environment that our elders set up for us today in our church. And we come in every Sunday. Basically, there are people like our greeters are handing out cards that have different parts of the liturgy, I guess. We're a Southern Baptist church, but we have some high church elements, I guess you could say, at our church, where that have like the opening scripture reading, that have the scripture that comes after our time of confession. Historically, we've had somebody go up who's been assigned to go up and recite the Apostles' Creed, like lead us in reciting the Apostles' Creed. And we have somebody who's assigned to read that pillar at the end to remind us of what we've promised to do as church members and our benediction verse. A church member is asked to read an opening verse. When we do communion, which is a couple times a month, I think, we stand around in a circle, and a church member is asked to lead us in a prayer. Like we have like little groups around the room that stand around, that stand in a circle and take the elements together in like a small group setting. We confess silently, and then someone else gets up and reads a prayer of a prayer of confession for us, and like a reminder that we've been forgiven from Scripture. And then the benediction at the end. All of this is to say, there's a sort of interactive environment in the current church, the Sunday worship gathering that I'm a part of, that I've never experienced before. And I never really realized what I was lacking until I started experiencing this, because I participate in the worship gathering in a way, we as a body participate in the worship gathering in a way that no church I've ever been a part of does. You participate in the worship gathering in the minds of a lot of people if you're on stage singing or preaching. Otherwise, you're there as an audience in a way. Obviously, you and I and others listening probably know that's not the right way to think of it, but I think it would be fair to say that a lot of folks who show up on Sunday do think of it that way. But I think to the degree that we can, as church leaders, set up worship experiences, if you want to use that word, worship environments, in such a way that we interact more than we consume, that we cultivate more than we consume, we might kind of ignite a fire for worship in a way that hearing other people worship and lead and preach simply doesn't.